Okay, so let's dive into one of the most brutal and honestly just baffling unsolved crimes in California history. We're talking about the Keddie cabin murders. This is a case that's been haunting people for over 40 years, and the search for answers, well, it's just as twisted and strange as the crime itself.
You know, that quote from a modern investigator, screwed up as a soup sandwich. I mean, it just perfectly captures the absolute chaos of this case, doesn't it? It's a story that's really defined by decades of frustration, mishandled evidence, and just so many false leads that have plagued the investigation right from the very beginning. All right, so here's a quick look at the timeline. We start in '81 with the discovery. A few years later, Tina's remains are found. Then things go cold until 2013. And then a bombshell in 2018. To really get how we got from a gruesome discovery to a modern DNA hit, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. So picture this. It's the morning of April 12th, 1981. A 14-year-old girl, Sheila Sharp, is walking home from a sleepover at a neighbor's cabin. But when she opens the door to her own home, Cabin 28, she walks into an absolute, unimaginable nightmare.
So in the living room, she finds her mother, Sue, her older brother, John, and his friend, Jana Wingate. They'd all been tied up and just brutally murdered. And her 12-year-old sister, Tina, was just gone. But here's maybe the most chilling part of the entire thing. In the very next room, her two younger brothers and their friend were sleeping. They were completely unharmed. How is that even possible?
And when we talk about the violence here, it was just extreme. The victims were bound with electrical wire and medical tape. The killers used multiple weapons, including knives and at least one hammer. I mean, get this. One of the steak knives used in the attack was found bent completely in half from the sheer force of it. That level of brutality, it immediately told police they were almost certainly looking for more than one killer. I mean, think about it. You've got a triple murder, a kidnapping, and 3 kid survivors. You would expect a massive, top-notch, perfectly coordinated investigation, right? Well, that is absolutely not what happened here. Right from day one, this case was just tragically undermined.
So the local sheriff's department was tiny and just completely overwhelmed. You'd expect them to call in homicide experts, but for some bizarre reason, the Department of Justice sent agents from their organized crime unit. I mean, what? And look at this comparison. In '81, they collected evidence, sure, but modern assessments show it became a total mess. Disorganized, contaminated, some evidence bags were never even opened. Leads that local deputies had were flat out ignored. And maybe worst of all, the original case log, the thing that tells you who did what and when, it just vanished. It was a disaster from the start. All right, let's talk about the suspects. Because as this case grew colder and colder, a kind of official story started to form around 2 local guys. And here's the thing. They had both since died, which made them pretty convenient culprits for a crime that nobody seemed to be able to solve. So the main suspects were Marty Smart and his friend, Bo Bubiday. Now, the case against them was, well, it was all circumstantial. You had Marty, who was a neighbor. He reported a hammer missing that matched one of the murder weapons. His wife also told police they were acting super suspicious on the night of the murders, even burning something in their wood stove. But the things that really sealed the deal in the public's mind were a rumored confession to a therapist and one really, really damning letter. And here's the line that would basically define this case for decades. In a letter to his wife after he left town, Marty Smart wrote this: "I've paid the price of your love, and now that I have bought it with 4 people's lives." I mean, wow. For pretty much everyone, that was it. That was the smoking gun. A confession, plain and simple. So for years, that quote basically was the case. But is it really what it seems? As new investigators and even online sleuths started digging into the old files, they found that this smoking gun evidence and a few other key pieces were maybe they were completely out of context. Okay, check this out. When you read the full context of that letter, it tells a totally different story. He writes, "I gave up 4 of the most precious things in my life for what? For you." The 4 people he's talking about, it wasn't the victims. It was his own 4 kids from a previous marriage. He felt like he'd abandoned them to be with his wife. It wasn't a confession at all. It was just a guy rambling on about his failed marriage. And that supposed confession to his therapist? Yeah, that fell apart too. Turns out, a later police report, one that wasn't really public knowledge for years, shows that the therapist was interviewed by the DOJ and flat out denied it.
He said Martin Smart never confessed the murders to him. So another key piece of the puzzle just evaporates.
So, if the case against the two main suspects is suddenly looking a lot weaker, you have to ask, who else was there? Well, if you go back to the original police files, they point to two other guys, Chuck and Henry, who had really inconsistent stories. They admitted to being at the resort super early in the morning on the night of the crime, and there was even an anonymous tip that one of them had confessed.
Okay, so let's fast forward. The case goes cold for decades, just frozen in time. But then, in 2013, a new team takes over, and they are determined to go through every single piece of old evidence they can find, but this time with all the modern forensic technology we have now. The cold case was finally starting to heat up. And you know what? Their work started to pay off. Big time. In 2016, they actually found a hammer in a local pond that matched the description of the one Smart reported missing. They found a tape recording of an anonymous call from 1984 that was never logged as evidence. But the biggest discovery of all was a tiny piece of medical tape found near Sue Sharp's body way back in 1981, and it was finally going to be tested for DNA. And this is the bombshell. In 2018, investigators announced they got a DNA profile from that piece of tape, and it was a match. But here's the kicker. It didn't match Marty Smart. It didn't match Bo Bobade. The DNA matched a known living suspect. So with a living suspect identified by DNA, you have to wonder, will the 40-year mystery of Cabin 28 finally be solved? I mean, think about it. There's a DNA match. There was a living person of interest. And yet here we are years after this huge announcement, and still no arrest has been made. It just leaves the families and everyone who's followed this case still waiting for an answer. The question is, will justice ever finally find its way back to Cabin 28?